Hey friends, how's everyone doing today? Hope you're all having an amazing day so far. Tamie M coming to you from TamieMCoaching.com. And what I want to talk to you about today is why on earth, what is it about us, what's going on here that we attract emotional manipulators and destructive narcissists in our lives. Like, what's the deal? If you're anything like I was at a point in my life, you're starting to notice a trend. You're starting to notice a pattern. You're starting to notice that, I can break up with this one and I can kick that one to the curb, but in no time, there's another one right behind him or her, and often worse than the last one. So what the hell's going on? Well, that, my friends, is what we are going to talk about today. If we haven't met before, I'm going to take a quick moment to introduce myself. My name is Tamie M. I am an empowerment coach for women. I help women break free from painful relationship patterns through a proven 8-week process called the Freedom Class. And if you're interested in some information in the Freedom Class, you can go on over to www.tamiemcoaching.com. All the deets are there. We've got a new group opening on September 7th. If that's of interest to you, there's a link at the bottom of the page to apply and book a free strategy call with me. So what is it about us that attracts emotionally manipulative people and destructive narcissists? Big subject. Kind of the story of my life, which has become the work of my life, because when I really woke up to the reality, and it's multi-layered, my life changed for the better. And I'm very passionate about helping others wake up to the multi-layered reality, the truth, so that their lives can change for the better too. So I've already decided I'm going to get a little personal here today in order to really drive the point home. I'm going to share with you a story from my past, because I think, you know, I've got a lot of stories to share, but I think this one will really drive the point home. I will share it for no other reason than to serve you, in that I believe it will really drive the point home more than anything I could say. Before we get to that, I want to say this. A Course in Miracles says that I am not the victim of the world that I see. I am not the victim of the world that I see. Now, I speak to women every day, people every day, guys too, but women in particular every day. More often than not, untreated codependents who are very much living from a victim standpoint, very much living from a victim standpoint. And I get it, because the truth is, many of us have been victimized. The truth is, many of us have been victimized. Now, what I believe to be true is that victimization started really, really young in life. It started really, really young, certainly within the first 7 years. And that set us up for what we were going to be attracted to and attract into our lives as we grew up and grew into adulthood. It literally programmed us on an unconscious level. But A Course in Miracles teaches that I am not the victim of the world that I see. So I believe, because I've lived it, the truth is we can choose to step out of victimhood. We do not have to live from a place of victimization. We do not have to live from a place of victimization. But there's some work to do to get there. There's some work to do to get there, and that's what we're going to talk about. The reality is there is something going on in us if we are having experiences over and over and over again with people. The same people, different people, new people showing up all the time. You know, like some women will say, like, I can walk into a room of 500 people, and if there's one alcoholic, that's the one I'm going to be attracted to, right? There's something going on in us if we are having the same experiences over and over again. And that is where our power lies. And I believe that is, in part, at least, what the Course is saying when it is saying that I am not the victim of the world that I see. I have the ability to change what I carry internally, therefore what I see and experience externally. So I'm going to take a sip of my tea before I dive into my story. I see I have a whole bunch of people who have hopped on. Thanks for joining, Sandra and Heather, and because I'm not wearing my glasses, I can't see who else is on, but thanks for joining, ladies. Do me a favor, Christy, how are you? Thanks for hopping on, love. If you're catching me live, drop me a 1 in the comments. If you're catching the replay, drop a 2. And if you're new to my live broadcast, let me know you're new and let me know where you're coming in from so I can reach out and say hello. All right, so I'm going to take you back to 2006. 2006, I am a year into my sober recovery. I am dating, not for the first time, a man who is, I'm involved in a relationship with a man who is an exact vibrational match to my family of origin, the men in my family of origin, the pain of my family of origin, the experiences of my family of origin. He even looks like the men in my immediate family of origin, like he could have been one of the brothers. That's how much of a vibrational match he was. Now, of course, I don't actually consciously realize this when we first connect and sparks fly and all the chemistry gets going, but in retrospect, 1000%. In fact, halfway down the path, it started to dawn on me, right? The match was uncanny on a frequency level, how this stuff works, right? So that's not the first time I have attracted a man into my life who I became intensely and dysfunctionally and dramatically and painfully enmeshed with, who was a match to my family of origin and my family of origin pain and my family of origin experiences. Okay, but this is a really good example to drive this point home in terms of why do we attract emotional manipulators? I believe, based on my experience, all the work I've done, what I've learned, what have you. So it's 2006. I'm about a year into my sober recovery. We have come back from being away for the weekend. We've been away at my cousin's wedding. Now, at some point in our relationship, I think we're about, it was a year and a half into our relationship at this point. I had shared with him that I had been sexually molested by an uncle as a child. From the ages of about 7 to 11, I had been sexually molested by an uncle as a child, and I had shared this with him. I didn't tell him which uncle. I just told him that this had gone on, and it was a painful secret that I had been carrying my whole life. As a caveat, unbeknownst to me, that secret kept me very, very sick, very, very crippled emotionally and spiritually for a very long time. Side note. So he's in possession of this information. We come back from a wedding where the majority of my family of origin, not all of them, but the majority of them are there. And he is going on and on and on about this one uncle in particular and how wonderful he is. And what an amazing father he is, and what an amazing husband he is, and what an amazing man he is. Now, I've just come off of a weekend in close proximity to my family of origin, and, you know, a year into sober recovery, we're pretty raw. We're pretty raw. And having just come off of that weekend, I'm pretty fragile, and, you know, I'm pretty fragile. Let's just put it that way, right? Energetically, I am way off the beam. But I'm very calmly listening to this, and very calmly, at a certain point, I can't take it anymore. I cannot contain this anymore. And I share with him, just so you know, that's the uncle. And he immediately knew what I was talking about. He immediately knew what I was talking about. Now, I'm a year and a half into this relationship with this man who supposedly loves me, It's a very destructive narcissistic relationship. So those of you who tune into me are either living that or have lived that, so you know what that is. But he, with words, supposedly loves me, although his actions very rarely back that up, but he supposedly loved me. And I have just very calmly delivered this piece of information. And his reaction to me was, and I quote, in an explosion of rage, he says to me, "He's a wonderful fucking husband, and a wonderful fucking father, and a wonderful fucking man. How fucking dare you? I'm not gonna hate him for you." He screams at me. How dare I share this information with him? This individual, who I just very gently said, "Oh, by the way, that's the uncle," while you stand there in my home going on and on and on about how wonderful he is. Just so you know, things are not always as they appear, right? And his response was, "How dare you? He's a wonderful fucking husband, a wonderful fucking father, a wonderful fucking man, and I'm not gonna hate him for you." Boom, mushroom cloud over my condo. So needless to say that them's fighting words, right? Needless to say, that was the end of our relationship. That truly was the end of one of the most frustrating, painful, sick, toxic relationships. Not the most, but probably, you know, a good close second or third, like high up there. One of the most disgusting, to be honest with you, emotionally, psychologically, physically, what I endured in that relationship. Appalling. So that was the end, right? That was so awful that it was the end of that relationship. Thank God. But here's the thing, my friends. Here is the real reason I share this story with you. I had been doing my work to that point enough to know that he was reflecting back to me what I had been doing to myself for, at that point, 30 years. For at that point, it started when the perpetration, when the sexual exploitation, when the manipulation into silence began. As a child, we are targeted, we are groomed, we are manipulated. That's a whole other live, a whole other subject. And please, if this particular content resonates with you, don't go running out and exposing secrets that you're not yet ready to expose. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Don't go running out and doing anything rash, because that can be very dangerous and harmful to yourself and others. I fortunately was guided and led in time to handle things. I believe I look back and I'm like, thank God I had the guidance and support that I did, because I handled it. There isn't much I would do differently. Let's just put it that way. There's very little I would do differently. In any event, that's a whole other conversation. But here's the thing. The point of this story. He was reflecting back to me what I had been doing to myself for 30 years. For 30 years. For 30 years, I kept that secret. I carried that secret. On the odd occasion when I would divulge it to a therapist or a very close friend, which I think happened maybe once or twice, the conversation would be, well, you've got to come out with it. You've got to come out with it. And my whole thing was, too many people would get hurt. Too many people would get hurt. So I carried this sick, toxic secret like a tumor in my heart, keeping me emotionally crippled, stuck, sick, drinking and drugging for a long time, quite frankly. Quite frankly, like I said, when this whole episode took place, I was a year into my sober recovery. I was medicating pain for a long time in a lot of ways before that, right? So I had been doing that to myself, and whenever it was suggested to me that I needed to deal with it, my defense was too many people would get hurt. For me at the time, that was my grandmother, that was the aunt, their children, my cousins who I loved like siblings. Too many people would get hurt, with no consideration at all as to the damage that I was doing to myself or had been done to me. The reality is, I wasn't going to hurt those people. He already had, vicariously through me. I wasn't the one who was going to do the damage. He already had. But that was what the manipulation and growing up in a very sick family, on the receiving end of all manner of narcissistic abuse and all of the manipulation that goes along. And if you're anything like me and you got to be the family scapegoat, there's a whole bunch of bonuses that go along with that. You know exactly what I mean. If that is the role that you played, we are warriors. We are warriors. You were not given that role for nothing. We are warriors. We are whistleblowers. We are here on purpose, but excruciatingly painful. He was reflecting back to me what I had been doing to myself for decades. And by virtue of that explosion, I had a mirror held up to me. And fortunately, I was at that point starting to wake up enough that I was starting to connect dots. Now, that's not to say that what he did wasn't beyond appalling and absolutely freaking disgusting. It was one of the, it was beyond, I mean, it was, and there's more to this story that I could tell you in terms of the circumstances around it that would add to, like, oh my goodness, like the evil around this entire situation. But that doesn't serve any purpose. The purpose is to share this story with you, to share that they reflect back to us what we carry internally one way or another. Often they are reflecting back to us what we have been doing to ourselves. So when the Course says, I am not a victim of the world I see, that doesn't mean that we haven't been victimized. But, you know, as we grow into adulthood and hopefully we are starting to wake up through some sort of healing and recovery journey, because as human beings on planet Earth, we're all recovering from something, or should be, in my humble opinion, we can start to recognize that we have choice. We have choice. And when we stop hurting and damaging ourselves, we stop attracting people who are reflecting that back to us. We stop attracting people who are reflecting that back to us. He, like many people in my family of origin, not all of them, because some of them couldn't utter the words to save their lives. They're so deeply unconscious and so crippled with pain. But he, like many of the people in my family of origin, was pretty damn good at uttering the words, I love you, with zero anything to back it up, which was a direct reflection of my own lack of self-love. I could not attract a man into my life who was capable of loving me until I was capable of loving myself first. And that whole experience, I have to tell you, was a turning point. It was definitely a turning point for me. Now, it was another 3 years after that before I was emotionally, psychologically, spiritually sober and strong enough to be able to stand up and tell the truth where it needed to be told. And still, it was not for me that I did it. It was motivated by the next generation of children coming along. And that timing, the crossroads of that timing in my life in terms of where I was at on my own healing and recovery journey, and the next generations of babies coming along, it was time. I was fully supported by a therapist, by a killer sponsor who had a killer sponsor, who had, two of those three people had tremendous background in dealing with those particular issues. I was guided, I was supported, I was held, I was carried, I was, thank God I had what I had around me, and that enabled me to come out with the truth, to keep the next generation of children safe, and then go through my own real dark night of the soul and grieve the loss of 8 people in one foul swoop, which took years, I share that with you to say, we do not go running out irresponsibly speaking our truth when we're talking about such major, great, big, huge, heavy issues. I am all about standing in the truth. But when it comes to these kinds of things, like if you have to cut my heart open and go in there to pull out a tumor, there's going to be some damage done, right? It was like open heart surgery without the anesthetic. There was some damage done to get in there to remove the tumor that was making me sick, and then it took time to heal that wound. And I was fully supported. And if you have these sorts of things that are yet unaddressed and it is your time, seek out people who know what the hell they're doing and know what the hell they're talking about and have experience, and not just one necessarily. Surround yourself. It made all the difference for me. I can look back on that situation and say, the only thing I would have done differently is when I confronted the uncle, the perpetrator himself, he would not have gotten off so easy. If we were having that conversation today, it would be a very different conversation. A very different conversation. But I did the best that I could at the time and with the resources that I had at the time, and I was in a whole lot of pain. And in retrospect, he got off pretty freaking easy. Oh well. Bottom line is, I told the truth to the people who needed it. Whether they believed it or not was not my responsibility. What they chose to do with that information was not my responsibility. Was I thrown under the bus and completely smear campaigned by the narcissist involved? Absolutely, absolutely. And because I was well protected and well surrounded and well supported, I was well protected. Follow me? So be very, very careful how you go about dealing with these great, big, huge issues if you've got them to deal with. I cannot emphasize that enough. And that is for your own protection, because these are painful things to deal with. Now, the reality is, I was born again. The freedom on the other side of that, my friends, although the motivation was not for me, genuinely, sincerely at the time, the freedom on the other side of that, the peace on the other side of that, the personal power on the other side of that, indescribable. Indescribable. My only regret is that I didn't have the strength and the ability to do it 20 years earlier. That's my real only regret, is that I did not have the strength to do it 20 years earlier. A whole other story. The major point of this message today is this. And I know it's a heavy one, I know it's a big one, but it's because, like I said, I talk to women every day, and I get that we feel like victims because we have been victimized, but we have the ability to step out of that. And what we must realize is that they are merely reflecting back to us what we carry internally. 95% of the game is unconscious. You might not even be completely conscious of all of it, but if it's showing up on your radar, it's in your unconscious, trust me. Whatever they are doing to you is likely a repetition of what was done to you a very long time ago, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically. And you have perpetuated that pattern by virtue of your unconscious programming. And that is why it continues to show up on your radar. And you can break up with them all you want. You can divorce them all you want. You can kick them to the curb all you want. You can get in all the, groups on Facebook and bash them and stare at the problem and drum up the drama and do that all you want. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't heal anything. Our work is internal. Our work is internal. If you want to change what's going on the outside, you got to change what's going on the inside. And that, my friends, is the whole point of this message today. I hope you got some value out of that. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, comment, and or share. Once again, my name is Tamie M. I am an empowerment coach for women. I help women break free from painful relationship patterns through a proven 8-week process called the Freedom Class. And if you want some information on that, you can go on over to www.tamiemcoaching.com. All the details are there. Our next group program opens September 7th. That's a couple of weeks away. So if you're interested, you can always just drop a comment or send me a private message as well. Always happy to hear from you. If you have some questions, never hesitate to reach out. And with that, my friends, am off to the mountains today because I am dying for some fresh mountain air. So I'm gonna hop in my truck. We are very lucky to live like not even an hour to the Rocky Mountains. So I'm gonna grab my laptop and go find a cafe somewhere in Canmore, breathe some fresh mountain air, go for a nice walk by the river, have myself a nice dinner, and just get into that fresh mountain vibe and enjoy the rest of the day. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day as well. Much love, know your value, unlock your freedom. Mwah. Bye for now.